MTG never expected that Jasmine Crockett would have researched her educational background so thoroughly. Greene constantly played the common-sense conservative card, but Crockett had found out. Greene's business degree was average, she had no law experience, her public service background was minimal. So who was really unqualified? The House Judiciary Committee room buzzed with unusual tension on that sweltering July morning. What was supposed to be a routine hearing on legal ethics had attracted an overflow crowd, drawn by the promise of fireworks between two of Congress's most polarizing figures. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia sat at the committee table with her characteristic defiant posture, shoulders back, chin raised, ready for battle. At 49, she had built her political brand on confrontation, conspiracy theories, and an aggressive style that had made her both a hero to her base and a lightning rod for criticism. Across the horseshoe-shaped table sat Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, methodically organizing a stack of documents with the precision of someone who had spent years building legal cases. The contrast between the two women couldn't have been starker. Greene's bombastic energy versus Crockett's controlled intensity. The hearing's official topic was professional standards and qualifications in public service. But everyone in the room knew it was really about something else. A clash between two fundamentally different visions of what qualified someone to serve in Congress. Greene had been building up to this moment for weeks, using social media and cable news appearances to question Crockett's credentials as a fake lawyer and unqualified Democrat who had been installed by the establishment rather than earning her position through merit. What Greene didn't know was that Crockett had spent the past month conducting what she privately called opposition research on herself, not to find vulnerabilities, but to document her qualifications in exhaustive detail while simultaneously researching Greene's background with the thoroughness of a prosecutor building a case. Committee Chairman Jim Jordan called the hearing to order at 10 a.m. sharp. Today we examine the important question of professional qualifications and ethical standards for those who serve in elected office. Greene was recognized first and immediately went on the offensive. Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this important hearing. The American people deserve to know whether their representatives have the qualifications and experience necessary to serve in Congress. She turned to look directly at Crockett. There are members of this body who have been promoted beyond their qualifications, who use fancy degrees from elite institutions to hide the fact that they lack real-world experience and practical knowledge. It was vintage Greene, attacking without naming names but making her target obvious to everyone in the room. The people of America don't need more lawyers who think they're smarter than everyone else, Greene continued. They need common-sense conservatives who understand how the real world works. When it was Crockett's turn to respond, she didn't take the bait. Instead, she opened her folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin by discussing what qualifications actually mean in the context of public service. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. Representative Greene, you've made some interesting claims about qualifications and experience. I thought it might be helpful to examine what qualifications each of us brings to this position. Greene straightened in her chair, sensing that this wasn't going to be the defensive response she had expected. Let's start with education, Crockett said, consulting her notes. I have a bachelor's degree from Baylor University, where I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business and political science. I then earned my law degree from the University of Houston Law Center, where I was on the law review, and graduated in the top 10% of my class. She looked up at Greene. Representative Greene, could you share your educational background with the committee? Greene looked slightly uncomfortable. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Georgia. And your class rank? Crockett asked politely. That's not really relevant. Your GPA? Representative Crockett, I don't think. Any honors, Dean's List? Academic achievements of any kind? Greene's jaw tightened. I graduated with a solid education that prepared me for real-world business experience. Crockett made a note. I see. And after graduation, what was your professional experience before entering politics? I worked in our family construction business and operated a CrossFit gym. How long did you work in construction? I helped manage the business for several years. In what capacity? Were you licensed as a contractor? Did you have construction management training? Any professional certifications in the construction industry? Greene was clearly becoming agitated. I worked in the family business and learned practical skills. And the CrossFit gym? How long did you operate that? About 3 years. Any business management training? Certification in fitness instruction? Experience running other businesses? Representative Crockett, I think you're missing the point. Actually, I think I'm getting to the point, Crockett said, turning to another page in her folder. Let me share my professional background for comparison. She looked directly at Greene. After law school, I worked as a public defender for 4 years, handling over 800 cases including felonies, misdemeanors, and appeals. I then joined the Dallas County District Attorney's Office, where I prosecuted violent crimes for 6 years. Crockett's voice grew stronger. During my time as a prosecutor, I handled 47 felony jury trials, including murders, sexual assaults, and armed robberies. I had a conviction, weight of 89%, and I was promoted to chief prosecutor in the Family Violence Division. She paused to let that sink in. After leaving the DA's office, I opened my own law firm, where I represented clients in criminal defense, civil rights cases, and business litigation for 8 years before running for office. The contrast was devastating in its simplicity. So, Representative Greene, Crockett continued, when you talk about qualifications and real-world experience, I'm curious what standards you're using. Greene tried to regain her footing. The voters of Georgia elected me based on my values and my commitment to fighting for their interests. They did, Crockett agreed. But you've been questioning my qualifications for office, so I think it's fair to examine what those qualifications actually are. She pulled out another document. You've called me a fake lawyer. Representative Greene, are you familiar with the Texas State Bar? Of course. And you're aware that it's a legal requirement to pass the bar exam and maintain good standing with the state bar to practice law in Texas? Yes. Good. I'm licensed to practice law in Texas, where I passed the bar exam on my first attempt. I'm also licensed in federal court and have argued cases before the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Crockett looked directly at Greene. Do you have any legal credentials at all? I don't need legal credentials to serve in Congress. You're absolutely right, Crockett said. You don't. But you also don't have the standing to question other people's legal credentials when you have none of your own. The room was getting uncomfortable now. This wasn't the usual political theater of congressional hearings. This was a systematic dismantling. Let's talk about public service, Crockett continued. Before running for Congress, did you serve in any elected positions? School board, city council? Any form of public service? I was involved in community organizations. Which ones? Greene hesitated. Various groups supporting conservative values. Can you name one? I prefer not to get into specific. Representative Greene, you're questioning my qualifications for public service. I think the public deserves to know what qualifications you brought to this position. Crockett turned to her notes again. Before running for Congress, I served on 3 nonprofit boards focused on criminal justice reform and civil rights. I also volunteered as a legal advisor for small businesses and provided pro bono legal services for low-income families. She looked up. I'm still waiting to hear about your public service experience. Greene was now visibly flustered. Representative Crockett, I think you're trying to make this about credentials instead of results. Results? Crockett interrupted. Let's talk about results. In your time in Congress, how many bills have you authored that became law? Greene's voice was barely audible. Legislative success isn't just about how many bills have you authored that passed the House. The Democratic majority has blocked. How many bills have you authored, period? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Representative Greene, in my first term in Congress, I've authored or co-authored 23 pieces of legislation, including 7 bills that passed the House with bipartisan support. 3 of those bills became law. She pulled out yet another document. I've also served on 4 committees, attended 94% of committee meetings, and maintained one of the highest voting attendance records in Congress. Crockett's voice took on a prosecutorial edge. So when you talk about qualifications and results, Representative Greene, what exactly are you referring to? Greene looked desperate. I represent the voice of real Americans who are tired of career politicians. Representative Greene, you've spent this entire hearing questioning my qualifications while refusing to discuss your own. That's not representing real Americans. That's deflection. Crockett gathered her papers. You've called me unqualified, a fake lawyer, and an establishment plant. But the facts tell a different story. Her voice grew stronger. I earned my credentials through academic achievement, professional success, and community service. I've built a record of legislative accomplishment based on hard work and expertise. She looked directly at Greene. You, on the other hand, have built a career on controversy, conspiracy theories, and personal attacks. You've authored no significant legislation, achieved no meaningful policy victories, and contributed nothing to the actual work of governance. The committee room was dead silent. So I have to ask, Representative Greene, if qualifications matter so much to you, why do you so consistently demonstrate that you lack them? Greene's face was red with anger. Representative Crockett, you can attack me all you want, but the American people see through your elitist credentials. The American people see through a lot of things, Crockett replied calmly, including politicians who use attacks and conspiracy theories to distract from their own lack of qualifications. She stood up from her chair, something that surprised everyone in the room. Representative Greene, you came here today to question my fitness for office, but you've inadvertently demonstrated something important, that credentials matter, experience matters, and qualifications matter. Crockett's voice carried the authority of someone who had spent years in courtrooms, facing down much more intimidating opponents than Greene. The people of Texas sent me here because I have the education, experience, and track record to do this job effectively. The people of Georgia sent you here for different reasons, but effectiveness doesn't seem to be one of them. She gathered her materials. If you want to question someone's qualifications for office, Representative Greene, I suggest you start by examining your own. As Crockett sat back down, the committee room remained in stunned silence. Greene looked like she had been hit by a truck, her usual bombast replaced by visible defeat. Chairman Jordan tried to restore order and move to other witnesses, but the damage was done. The hearing that was supposed to elevate Greene's profile had instead become a clinic in how preparation and credentials could demolish bluster and bravado. Within hours, clips of the exchange were circulating on social media. But unlike most political confrontations, the response wasn't entirely partisan. Even some conservative commentators acknowledged that Crockett had systematically dismantled Greene's credibility. I disagree with Representative Crockett's politics, wrote one prominent conservative columnist, but her qualifications are unquestionable. MTG walked into a buzzsaw of her own making. Perhaps the most telling response came from a political science professor who had studied congressional effectiveness. What we witnessed today wasn't just a political confrontation. It was a demonstration of why qualifications and competence matter in governance. Representative Crockett showed that substance trumps spectacle every time. 3 weeks after the hearing, Greene quietly stopped using the phrase fake lawyer in her attacks on Democratic colleagues. It wasn't an admission of error, but it was recognition that some battles can't be won when your opponent comes armed with facts. Because sometimes the most effective response to personal attacks isn't counterattacks. It's simply demonstrating that you're qualified for the job you were elected to do. If this story reminded you that credentials and competence matter more than controversy and conspiracy theories, make sure to subscribe for more stories of people who prove that the most powerful weapon in politics isn't the loudest voice. It's the most qualified candidate.